I always save my best fades for you, Nick. It's what we do here. Hey,
I
welcome
appreciate
aboard,
that.
and welcome to the Scary Alvarez podcast. I'm, of course, Scary Alvarez, Wine Island enjoyer, Sherry Wine destroyer, Jake's grandpa, and Cindy's plus one when she'll have me. Jake, not feeling too happy this morning about some of the NFL news. We don't have to get too into this, but wow, Packers really added a Spitfire there.
Yeah, that was scary. That was unbelievable. I mean, frankly, I got that news as I was getting downtown for my radio spot ahead of the game. And, it's one thing to see some of those blockbuster trades in the NFL. Of course, see it a lot in the NBA, but somebody in his prime that, from my understanding, was really just trying to bring his agent into some of those discussions. I don't think, like, obviously the money is insane, but it just kind of happens in the NFL where the market resets. So I'm just shocked. And then, of course, he ends up with, a team that many Badgers fans probably like. So it's a little crazy.
Hey, it works for me, and it's nice seeing the hubris and ego of Jerry Jones play into the Packers' hands. There isn't another owner in the NFL who would have let that happen yesterday. So thank
No.
you, Jerry. Appreciate it. Well, anyway, let's talk about the Badgers. Obviously, an exciting win is maybe not how I describe it, but a workman-like 17 to nothing shutout win over
Yeah.
the Miami Redhawks. But I kind of want to go into a few questions on this. I know your time is valuable. I really appreciate you hopping on, Nick. For those of you who don't know, and I don't think there's anyone who watches this who doesn't know, Nick is all over the place with 247 Sports. And Nick, just tell what you're up to right now. Obviously, you covered the Wisconsin Badgers in basketball, football, recruiting. What's kind of your spiel here?
Week, obviously, we'll get into the game, which has been the big focus. But every single Friday that I can physically get out to a game, I'm doing that. A nice thing about a Thursday game, right, is many of us college football fans get to enjoy the next couple of days, watching. So I came down to Illinois. It's where my beautiful family is, and just happens that a player that Wisconsin is really into in 2027 happens to be playing about 15 minutes from my folks' place. So we're doing this show. I'm going to have a little meal with them and then go see 27 edge target Keyshawn Taylor. So you'll get interviews, scouting reports. We've actually seen some nice growth in the site these last 3 weeks and hope for that to continue.
Awesome. I love it. And you love those edge guys. I think,
Yeah.
as you can see, even last night,
Yeah.
the monumental difference that a spry and talented edge can make for the Wisconsin defense.
Yeah.
It's just it's gonna be fun to watch these guys this year. Anyway, so
Yeah.
tell me, the best thing you saw, kind of the biggest takeaway and the positive ledger that you take away from last night's game for
Yeah,
the Badgers.
scary. Well, I know you fortunately read a lot of my content, man. So you've seen, the biggest thing was the two biggest areas that I was quote unquote, pumping up, saying these are going to be great, were the tailbacks on offense and the outside linebackers on defense. And so, as we were just naturally talking about with Micah Parsons and Keyshawn Taylor, of course, uh, I think that you saw a great outside linebacking room for Wisconsin last night. Now, Badger fans aren't not used to that, right? There have been a lot of great ones, especially this last 15, 12 seasons. But, the pass rush was lacking the last couple seasons. And obviously, the staff and the players would tell you that themselves. I'd like to give a little bit of a shout out to one of the great leaders of this program, Daryl Peterson. I kept pumping him scary as one of the best players throughout camp. And I wasn't here, 3, 4 years ago, but I guess people have heard that a lot. And then maybe they didn't always see some of the production. I think you saw it last night. I think you see a young man and a leader that's comfortable in his role. Mason Reiger, that dude's going to play on Sunday. So he is getting very comfortable in the system. Sebastian Cheeks, guys, I think has found a home at outside linebacker. You could go down the line, right? Tyrese Fearby in it a little bit. Nick Clayton going to be a future star. I think he got maybe 1 or 2 snaps, no more than 2, but he got in late. And so scary. The best thing I saw was against a pretty quick, athletic, skilled, talented quarterback. The defense, led by the linebackers, shut them down. And I'm sure we'll touch on Zachman and the safeties, but just a really impressive night. I would say, I'm going to say 75, 80% of the game was. I understand could have scored more, and obviously there was the QB situation, but of course they're keeping some things in going forward. So I thought that defense was really, really stout.
Yeah, that was great to see. And I mean, We say it was just a MAC team. Well, look, for those who are not indoctrinated, the Red Hawks are picked to finish at or near the top of the. They're projected to be a 9, uh, 8, 7. Definitely a bowl MAC team. They were one of the best two teams in the MAC last year, and Finn, who you just mentioned, was first team All MAC quarterback in 2023. So this is a competent. We're going to see better offenses this year, certainly, but this was a good first test, and I cannot remember any week last year where the defense looked as dominant as it did. Will it look like that in Tuscaloosa? Certainly not. But I thought that was just wonderful. And I said on Twitter, if this was a 34-17 game, the Badger fans would be like, "Hey, took care of business," but because it's 17-0 and it was a relatively close game for a while. I guess maybe I was have a confidence level that's higher than some fans. I never felt like that game was in jeopardy. I felt like Wisconsin, the way they were controlling the line of scrimmage,
Yeah.
and if you look at the yardage totals, what's your thoughts on that?
No, scary. I agree. It was funny. It was like you're waiting for that first score, and then, I know O'Neal, who I'll get into further. He had the rough, interception close to the end zone, but like outside of that, I was never really worried. I think there was like one impressive pitch and catch that the Red Hawks had, but otherwise, it didn't feel like they were moving the ball. So sure, you'd like to see 27, 32 points, but I wasn't really worried. Frankly, I thought that the way that O'Neal and the offense bounced back after that first slow, we'll say 20, 25 minutes, I thought was pretty respectable. I think they could have probably scored one late. Obviously, like I mentioned, they were 3, 5 yards away from scoring on the interception with O'Neal. Would tell you himself, it was a late read. I think people are saying it was a bad read. I disagree. I think it was a fine read. I think it was a terrific play call by Jeff Grimes. I just think he saw it too late. That happens.
Yeah.
It's part of processing. As a whole, scary, I'd probably give this game like a B plus or so. It wasn't perfect. Like I'm not saying, wow, that looked like a 10-win team throughout totally, but I think there's a lot of good you can take away. And by the way, there was a pretty good defense. I think I think it was that first season of Fickle. Like that defense had some good moments. That was the big year for Hallman and a couple other guys in that defensive backfield. This is the first home shutout in 3 years. So I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty notable because they're not playing, Bama, Ohio State, Michigan every single home game. So the fact that they were able to do that, the account tweeted out today, first time I think less than 150 yards and a shutout in 8.5 seasons since
Yes.
early 17. That's phenomenal. And that I
Yes.
think you give Mike Tressel some credit, right? Because a lot of people were, kind of trying to come at him, and nobody on the defense was perfect last year. Nobody would say that, but I think there needed to be an influx of talent. You saw that now. I mean, that front seven is just totally different, scary. So I think it's exciting. 0 points. It doesn't get any better than that.
I love it, and this is my stat man, Joe Ferguson, has a little different career path than Jake. Looked up, and that 117 yards total for Miami last evening was the lowest since the Iowa Hawkeyes posted a sub 100-yard total in 2017. So that's a really nice effort, and this Miami team might be better than that year's Iowa team. Nate Stanley was not his best year that year for old Nate, but that was such a fun game. I think the only points Iowa scored in that game were two INT returns for touchdowns. If you remember that, old Alex served a
Yeah,
couple of
I was actually
freebies
at
up.
that game. That was one of my
Okay,
last ones. That was a home game, right? You're saying?
yeah, Josh
Yeah, that was
Jackson,
one of my
Josh Jackson.
last ones as like a student enjoying before I kind of moved toward the reporting role. So yes, sir, I was there.
That was a fun one. That's another one of those games where like the score did not at all reflect the level of dominance. It was that 2017 defense was such a unit. It was so much fun to watch. But it's good. It's good to see. We're obviously, as I said, not every game is going to look like this, but it's nice to see that the tools that Tressel is working with this year in that room are a different breed than they were last year, and even some of the ones that aren't different, like Peterson they mentioned. Maybe sometimes players have fourth year breakthroughs. This could be his
No, but
best year.
scary. I didn't mean to cut you off, but man, kind of naturally, like you're spot on. I want to say yes, at least year 4 or 5 for him. Year 6 for Preston Zachman, and there's not a question in my mind that is a different player than we've seen. He was good last year. He was solid. But I told a lot of people, I watch closely, right? Not just the players, but the coaches at these practices. And Jack Cooper is a teacher, if that makes sense. He will pull the guys over, do a quick one-on-one. I mean, a lot of guys will do that. Paul Haynes does it well, EJ Whitlow, Jordan Reed. But I just noted that. And I think you're seeing a player in Preston Zachman that has the chance to be, I'll say it, that could potentially play his way into a Sunday discussion, like whether that's day 3 or undrafted free agent. I think from Twitter what I think of Austin Brown. I think he's an NFL guy. Looking at a couple other returners, like you mentioned, Brandon Lane. I don't know what his tallies were in terms of numbers, but like the D line and a couple of those guys that just got a little bit better. Dylan Johnson, I think, will come along. Jamel Howard, will see what opportunities look like for him. There are a lot of older guys in there, but yeah, definitely credit. And of course, right, the leading tackler didn't have to have that many to be the leading one last night, but just looks like an NFL guy, Christian Allegro. I think he's somebody that a lot of fans were excited to see, and just his sideline to sideline speed and some of that physicality on display last night.
In the past year or two, not so much in 23, but more in 24, you could look at that defense and say, here's where we're going to attack. It's so soft, whether that's the defensive line, whether it's some of the linebacking play, whether, it's in the backfield, although not so much in the safety room. I feel like, again, there's room for improvement everywhere, but there is not an easy identifiable place in this defense as I see it. And it's not just based on Miami, it's based on camp, as you well know, having been there,
Mm-hmm.
where you
Yeah.
could just say, oh, that's the soft spot. We're going to attack that. It doesn't feel like it exists.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well said. I'll tell you, it's not the linebackers, and it's not the safeties, as long as those vets can stay healthy. I want to see it a little more, but I don't think I'm going to say it's D-line because, again, Whitlow's a developer, and I think guys have been developed. So then you look to cornerback. I don't think it's Jameer Latimer. It's certainly not going to be Rico Hallman. At times, could it be maybe a newer corner, right? That number 2 spot, either Deani Hill, who's like 22 or 23, but new to this system, or young Emilio Agard, who I've written. I know you've seen it. I believe is
Oh,
a
yeah.
star. Yeah, at
Yeah.
times, but I thought he looked great. And again, it
Yeah.
helps that there was pressure. And so there weren't a ton of, oh my God, the quarterback has 5.5 seconds to process, the receivers get
Yeah.
separation. But I think I'd have to give the defense, if not an A plus, at least an A. I've preached it and I'm grateful. Yeah, you and so many other, our guys like the Lockdown guys and so many great podcast shows, people on our site, I think have listened to what I've said about the defense. I'm not calling it, the 85 Bears, but like when you have staff you believe in, and I believe in those guys, you get an influx of talent, and then you have stars coming back. Holman electing to come back. Austin
Yeah.
Brown, who could be a star, coming back. Zachman, yeah, I've got one more year in me. Like that says something to me. So whether this team wins 5 games or 10 games, and I believe it's somewhere in the middle, I think the defense will be the backbone of this group, especially if Edwards isn't 100% for a little bit. And I think that's totally fair, Scary.
Yeah, that's I think you're right. I would say I hope you're right. I think you're right. That's all. I think that the evidence is there for all those things to come to fruition. Well, you mentioned it's kind of the elephant in the room, the Edwards Jr. in the room. But I will say, based on some of the stuff that's been not leaked out, but it's been kind of coming out today on Friday, that things seem a little bit of a breath of relief based on what you think. Whenever you see those non-contact injuries in a game, you think Achilles or ACL or something. It sounds like this is not going to be a particularly long-term injury based on initial reports. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, Scary. I'm sure you were probably getting your sleep at this point, but at about 2:30 a.m. Would have been early Friday morning, late Thursday night. I posted, "Hey guys, you got to be careful about this type of thing, right? I'm not going to flat out put my name on, one of the biggest names injuries. Like, oh, he's all good." But I posted, guys, from what I'm hearing and from what people have said on the record. Like, if you watch Luke Fickell say what he did in his presser, and then we are fortunate we got to speak with Danny O'Neill, Vinny Anthony. I don't think they were trying to give away too much, but like if you have people skills, you can kind of see, okay, that they don't seem overly worried right now. You know what I mean? And even if you
Yeah.
watch Billy on the sidelines, Sure, of course, he'd love to be on the field, but like he was into it with the guys. He
Yeah, he
was
was moving
doing his
around.
handshakes with Danny. So what I reported was I expect him to miss a little time, but this doesn't seem like one where he's going to miss the year. And then my colleagues, great reporters at CBS Sports, Chris Hummer, um, Richard Johnson reported this morning, very encouraging, likely to be back within 3 or 4 weeks. And then I saw a Thamel report as well. So all of that saying, Scary, as long as he can come back and not too far away, maybe it's not, a I'm sorry, not a blessing in disguise, but we look at the silver lining. Okay, Danny O'Neil, who has started games before, gets these live game reps. The team galvanizes, comes together, and comes behind him. I thought there was that there. And I will add one more thing, Scary. I know we got, one or two more questions you want to hit on, but
Yeah.
my biggest story of the offseason, I will put my name on this one. From February through, we'll say July or August, was the culture is in a different place right now. And I stand by that. And I think players and staff would tell you that. I know many connected donors would. It's just the fact that last year at times, like if that injury happened, you could have felt the energy suck out of the stadium and guys would just put their heads down. And I'm not blaming those guys, whether they're gone or back. Like things happen. But now there is a stronger foundation in place. There's more trust in each other. And frankly, let's be honest, Scary, right? That's a little bit easier when there's more talent. And I think the portal, they probably hit on at least 70, 80% of those guys. The young high school guys are showing out, which is always fun to see with my recruiting coverage, seeing those guys make an impact with the Badgers. So all that together, man, I think is going to lend itself to a better year than some.
That's great. And I appreciate your coverage, obviously, because the first place, the average Wisconsin Badger is 2025. They've been beat down a little bit the last few years. That where the first place they go when they see an injury to Edwards is, oh, sky is falling. Because of course, the transfer portal Wisconsin quarterback job has become the least lucky, at least in early returns on this one, thing you could possibly. I imagine like getting a call. I don't think they're going to go to the portal next year, but if they do go to the portal again next year, I could just imagine like a person picking up going, "Oh, they're not here right now." It's just they hanging out with thick calls. But yeah, that's good to know, and I think you
Yeah.
can almost tell just kind of the demeanor, even with just seeing it. He's mentioned seeing Edwards on the sidelines. He's going to be okay, and I wouldn't be shocked honestly if he's back by Maryland. I wouldn't that wouldn't
Oh
surprise me a
yeah.
bit.
I mean, just this is not official reporting, but just kind of my educated guess. I would think Scary he's back by Maryland. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think he'll start next week. I mean, I think you can trust most of that room ideally against Middle Tennessee State, and that's no disrespect to those guys at all. It's just I think O'Neal has played, Simmons has played, Carter Smith is growing. So I would trust that room. I think Bama's probably a question mark for me. Do you rush him back? Is he feeling good there? Because knowing him a little bit, he would absolutely love to be back for any major competitions. I mean, that's a guy that wants to be playing at the next level. So we will see, but overwhelmingly positive feedback from the injury, from what we have heard and what's kind of been put out there by some larger names as well. But yeah, I felt like we were on top of this, and I'm grateful that intel was pretty spot on because I can tell you, Scary. I mean, you do know me well enough from the show or just messaging here and there. Like, I can kind of get along with anybody, build connections, but Billy, there is a magnetic side of him that brings people together. And, you don't want anybody to have to be dealing with a lot of injuries, especially their last year at CFB.
Yeah, I've heard you say the same things about Edwards, and not that he's the same guy as Tanner Mordecai, but there's a little bit of a leadership streak that both those guys had, where they kind of come into a room, the room stands at attention. Not like it stands at attention when old Scary Alvarez comes into the room. I mean, that's a different thing altogether. But it's. I was very heartened to get the reporting that it's not going to be a long term injury, and that's the good news. And hey, you mentioned it, Danny O'Neil getting extra reps because who knows? Maybe Edwards in game 9 goes down for the second half, knowing you have someone with experience to be able to come in, pick that ball in, and just start, chucking it around and using your feet. That was the one thing, of course, the interception in the end zone. I know there was like jokes like, "Oh, here we go again. It's Braden Locke," but he comes in there as a backup, runs it, and two of the plays he made with his feet, those are plays that I don't think Locke made in 2 seasons. you could just see the speed and the instinct. And so I think you'd like your starting quarterback to be there, obviously, but I feel like Danny O'Neil, it's in pretty good hands with him for the next couple weeks.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely scary. It's I'm high on Danny O'Neil. I mean, there were times in the spring, man, where he was making the standout plays, and I tweet him as a standout, and people would ask about Billy. Billy is better right now. He's more advanced, older, better size, like all that good stuff. But you won't see me doubting Danny O'Neil because there are some guys. If you've played football, which fortunately I did for a while, you just can recognize a gamer, and that's what he
Yeah.
is. He's not going to be perfect all the time. The interception, it's rough. You'd like to see him maybe run outside a little bit, kind of hit the sidelines at some of those runs, but like he takes it like a champ, man. He is very competitive and somebody great to speak with. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how things evolve this year and also potentially beyond.
Love it. Love to see it. I agree. Just seems like he's a winner. I'm not saying his win-loss record at San Diego State was incredible. I'm just saying like he has that, even if he doesn't look, if it isn't going perfectly or he just made a bad play, it looks like he has a short memory. That's exactly what you need a quarterback to have. But anyway, Nick, thank you so much. A lot going on in your life, and I really appreciate cutting some time over for Scary over us. And let's go to 2-0 next week. That's all you can do.
Hey, I think so, man. I feel good about 3-1 after this month too. So I appreciate it, Scary. We'll have to do another here, in September, October as it gets a little bit closer. But appreciate your flexibility and catch you in the future.
Appreciate it. We'll do the Billy Edwards Jr. comeback show.